All wings, report in. Austin, standing by.
Mike, standing by.
Austin, standing by.
The Rogue 3 podcast is locked on target. Whether it's movies, shows, books, comics, or more, we're going to be coming to you from a galaxy far, far away to celebrate all things Star Wars. Hey guys, welcome to our very first episode. This is the first episode of the Rogue 3 podcast. I keep wanting to say Rogue One. Rogue 3. My name's Austin. I'm here joined by a couple of my friends. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike. I've been a lifelong Star Wars fan and am looking forward to chatting and talking with you guys all about the series that I love so much.
Yeah, and I'm also Austin, also a longtime Star Wars fan, and really excited to be bringing this podcast together and giving us a regularly scheduled time to discuss our favorite thing.
Yeah, I hope this is really confusing for you guys. Lifelong Star Wars fans, we're all the same person, and two of us have the same name, so that's even more fun. So let's go ahead and dive into it, because I think something that's really special about Star Wars for a lot of people is that, like we said, it sits with you for a long time. And as we've grown up, we're all, in our late 20s, early 30s here. We have, Star Wars has been marinating in us for a while, and it's really changed the way that we see the world. And I think what's really cool is diving into where did we start experiencing it for the very first time? How'd you start experiencing Star Wars?
So my first Star Wars experience, actually, I did not know it was a Star Wars experience at the time, and I learned it in hindsight that it was a Star Wars experience. I was given a Max Rebo plush. I guess it would have been around the time of the Return of the Jedi special edition in '98. Because when I was a little kid, my favorite animals were elephants, and somebody just bought me that thinking it was a little blue elephant. And that was like not a consequential toy in my life. I just distinctly remember having an epiphany in like middle school, like, oh my God, that was a Star Wars toy the whole time. I didn't know. But my actual first Star Wars memory was when Attack of the Clones came out. I remember it was, at the beginning of summer, and I remember my mom said we were going to see Star Wars. And I said, I don't know what Star Wars is. And she said, little boys love Star Wars. You're going to love it. And I absolutely did. I've been hooked ever since. I don't remember if we got the VHS for Phantom Menace and watched it before we went and saw Attack of the Clones in theaters, or if we got it after. But by the end of the week, I had seen all five movies at the time. I was absolutely obsessed.
It's so funny to me that your first Star Wars movie might have been Attack of the Clones. I think we all worry so much about the order that we introduce these movies to kids in or whomever in. It didn't matter, did it? You were hooked and you watched the rest. I
Yeah,
love it.
absolutely. And I don't think my mom realized what an expensive proposition she had put me in as a second grade. Here we are.
Here we are. I think we've all kind of dumped quite a bit of money on this. Mike, what about you? How'd you get into Star Wars?
I think similarly to Austin, I have memories of playing Dark Forces on the old Windows, probably 98 computer in my family's basement. It was shared amongst our siblings. And I just remember that game, and I had never played Doom, so that was not an awareness I had. I would have only been 5 or 6 at the time. But similarly, the first memory that I can remember and actually have concrete memory of is being at a friend's house and seeing him building the Anakin Skywalker pod racer in Lego. So that first memory is not of the movies, it's not of shows or anything else. It's a Lego set, which is so funny because I wasn't really into Legos otherwise. I never really collected them. I never really did them very much. Like we had a tub at home, but I didn't really use them all that much. And when I think back, that's my first memory before movies, before anything else. It was that Anakin Skywalker pod racer.
And I think that's probably true for a lot of people because the three of us, we very much like grew up in like the highlight years of the prequel era, and it was just something like all kids were into. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it was so special growing up in that time and getting to like love all the toys and the video games, the movies, and
Mm.
the TV shows as they were coming out. We were too young to really know the negative conversations that were happening about Star Wars at the time.
Exactly.
I remember, I think I got into conscious prequel hate like in high school, but there's something about just like playing Star Wars with your friends and um, just being hit at a perfect age.
I also think it really shows the power of Lucasfilm and Star Wars merchandising.
Oh
That
my gosh, yeah.
two of our memories that we first remember is not of the movies, not it's the merchandise, it's Legos, it's action figures, it's these other things that you don't necessarily think that's what most people's first memory of Star Wars is, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that they remember playing with the toys before ever seeing a movie.
Well, I'm gonna just jump right on that train. My first memory is Queen Amidala Pepsi. I don't remember if Mom brought it home or we saw it on the shelves or something, but we thought, "Wow, that looks really cool. We've got to go see it." And so, of course, in 1999, I am like 3 or 4, and so we did not go see the Phantom Menace because it would have done nothing for us. I don't think. At 3, probably not quite yet. But by the time Attack of the Clones came around, we were more cognizant. So that was the first movie that I ever really remember watching over and over and over again. After, a little bit before that, I'm sure our mom showed us the prequels, or excuse me, the original trilogy. Um, but Attack of the Clones, that's what really hooked me into Star Wars. I think that the three of us, given where we grew up, the prequels are play a pretty big part in our hearts. Um, and I agree. I never saw any of that Star Wars hate until much after the fact.
So both of you have memories of watching a prequel film before the other
Mhm.
ones, right? Because that's not my experience. I remember watching the special
Oh
editions. We
yeah.
had them on VHS, and I think maybe it's after Phantom Menace came out. Because again, I would have only been about 6 or so when that came out, but I remember watching the special edition. I remember having the VHS tapes. And so to me, those are like my definitive original series. I don't remember the Sarlacc pit not having the beak. I don't remember Jedi Rocks not being part of Return of the Jedi. And so it's funny that I have that core memory of those are my first Star Wars movies are those special edition VHSs.
Oh, that is so funny. Yeah, I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know if I've ever seen the theatrical cuts of the original trilogy. I'm sure the versions that our mom would have shown us would have been the special editions. I don't even know if we could have gotten a hold of the originals at that point.
I think there was one release of the unedited original versions, but like the vast majority of people at this point, I think have only seen the special editions. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, we had the VHS and the special editions, and then I remember uh, the first time I saw like the I guess the special editions. When I'd seen Hayden Christensen in the Return of the Jedi finale for the first time, and like
Right.
processing that. Uh, but yeah, those special editions were definitely
I like that.
a big part. I just feel like every time we traveled a lot when we were younger, and I don't know how those VHS held up as much as we watched the VHSs of the original three and Phantom Menace just over and over again on repeat.
I wish I knew where the original VHSs I had were, but I'm pretty sure they're long gone.
Oh gosh, I think we may have borrowed them from a friend. We might still have in my parents' attic the VHS of Attack of the Clones. But I guarantee that thing it has seen some better days. We watched that thing over and over again. Um, I think we must have borrowed the original trilogy from a friend, so I don't think we ever even opened or owned it until we got the DVDs. We must have gotten the DVDs when they released those.
Yeah, so both of you were introduced by parents then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So technically, for me, it was my babysitter took us, but it was at my mother's behest. But I actually don't know that my parents have ever like sat down and watched a Star Wars movie, which is crazy because they were like perfect age when Episode 4 came out in theaters. but they somehow passed both of them by. But
Really?
they've been very supportive of mine and my brother's Star Wars journey. But yeah, it was technically the babysitter just took my brother and I. And my brother and I just kind of fed into each other as little kids.
My brother and I, so I have a twin brother, and so if you often hear me say us about my childhood, that's probably why. And I keep saying my mom introduced us to us, and she did. My dad was actually the big Star Wars fan, so he was the perfect age when A New Hope came out originally, and he saw that movie 11 times in the movie theater. Because back then you could see a movie more than one time without going bankrupt. Um, it was just his favorite thing ever. And, he loved Empire. And by the time Return of the Jedi came out, he was starting a little bit older and he drifted away from it. And it really wasn't in his brain as much. His brothers were into it, but other than that, he didn't really touch it. Um, and so when we got back into it, Mom showed it to us, and he got excited about it. But the new ones were never his favorites. He's very much one of those older is better kind of guys. But we still, even now, my parents have seen all the movies with us, and ever since Disney started re-releasing some new Star Wars movies, we've seen every single one as a family together, which is really nice.
I don't know if my parents have ever watched the originals. I think my dad has, but my mom, I have some doubts whether when it came out, she would have been a teenager. I doubt she was one to go and see them, and they weren't the ones that introduced me. It was my older brother, who's about 6 years older than I am, and so he was the one that was into Phantom Menace when it came out. I think those VHSs were probably kind of his. They were family, but they were his property. And I remember him going to the movies before I could go to the movies. He would go to see Revenge of the Sith at midnight. And even to this day, we still throw Star Wars memes at each other every so often and talk about it. And so he's really the one that led the way for me into Star Wars. My parents, I don't think we're really the ones to do that.
Were y'all pretty much big Star Wars fans your entire childhood? Like, I was a Star Wars fan, but I was really more of a Harry Potter kid. So my thing was more Harry Potter growing up, really until I got to high school, and then I jumped more into Star Wars, where I kind of got obsessive with it. But the obsession was delayed a little bit.
For me, Harry Potter filled the gap between Revenge of the Sith and Clone Wars coming out.
There you go.
So
3 years.
like late elementary school, like kind of like Harry Potter was definitely had my heart at that point. Um, but actually, my first date was I took a girl to see the Clone Wars movie in theaters.
What a movie to see, too.
Yeah, and she enjoyed it. She enjoyed it. She had a good time.
Yeah. I went through and watched the prequel movies, was obsessed. I remember sitting in front of the TV every time Star Wars, Clone Wars, the little shorts in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith came out. But then in the years after Revenge of the Sith, I didn't watch Clone Wars. I was vaguely aware of it, but by that point I was hitting high school, so I was a little bit older. And so for the most part, I didn't get back into it until the Disney acquisition. I had gotten older at
Ah,
that point, and I in college then I really started gravitating back towards it. I started watching the Clone Wars. Watched Rebels as it came out. Force Awakens and all of that really dragged me back into it. I would play video games and Battlefront 2 a little bit of the old PlayStation through those years in between Revenge of the Sith and Force Awakens. But other than that, I was not in it during those eras, but ever since really Rebels, Force Awakens, I can't get enough. So we want to talk a little bit about why we want to make a podcast, what this podcast means to us, why we're here, because we could talk Star Wars all day long on our own, but why we want to share it with other people. The first thing is we love Star Wars and we love the positivity that can come with it. And so we want to share more Star Wars positivity. We love the series. We always cherish it, and yeah, we'll acknowledge like not everything is perfect, not everything is exactly the way we would hope it to be, but we want to make sure that we still see the good in and amongst some things. and bring that forward and highlight it and just celebrate it. We love the series, we love the saga, and so we want to keep doing that. And we enjoy discussing it. We've been discussing Star Wars for years now together, and so we want to share that with other people and give others a community to build around and celebrate Star Wars with us. And we also wanted to add to our Star Wars knowledge, to draw us more in, think about reading books together and other media that isn't as common, not as many people dive into. We really want to dive into the entire saga, all of it, comics, books, everything that there is to be Star Wars.
Thinking back on that positivity piece, you mentioned not all of it's perfect. I think that a lot of times we'll sit here and we'll pick it apart, and that's fine. It's fine to pick something apart. You can still be a positive person and say, hey, this is what I didn't like with it. But something about Star Wars is that all Star Wars is perfect for someone. Someone is going to enjoy that piece of content. I was a teacher back when Rise of Skywalker came out, and that movie had some criticism, but I was teaching 10-year-olds at the time, and they loved it. They came in the next day, and they were so excited. They knew I liked Star Wars. They were so excited to talk to me about it, and it was so fun to see that movie through their eyes and realize these movies aren't necessarily made for me, a 29-year-old man. They're made for these kids who are just diving into fictional worlds for the first time, and it's fun for them, and they're enjoying it. And I think that people need to often remember that not every piece of Star Wars media is made for you. Different pieces of Star Wars media are made for different people, and just because you didn't enjoy it doesn't mean that someone else didn't enjoy it, and they're allowed to enjoy it. Don't take it personally if someone likes something that you don't like.
Well, and I think bringing that to a personal level, something I'm really looking forward to with this project is that we all have different parts of Star Wars we enjoy. And I'm looking forward to learning more about the things that I've not paid that much attention to in the past. Like, I'm not a big video gamer. I don't really enjoy playing video games that much, besides the occasional round of Mario Kart with friends. But Austin and Mike both really like video games, and I'm excited to learn more about those stories that I've kind of overlooked in the past. Contrariwise, I'm a really big theme park person, and I'm obsessed with Galaxy's Edge and everything to do about it. But the two of you may not have as much exposure to that, and so I'm looking forward, talking to you guys and teaching you about one of the greatest places on earth.
I think some of the most special stories really come from places that we wouldn't expect. If you don't touch video games, you miss all those really special personal stories. And the same token, we don't all fly down to Florida all the time to see the theme park. And I just came back from my first trip to Galaxy's Edge, and there's some really special storytelling there that a lot of Star Wars fans wouldn't get the chance to see if they didn't go, which I know is, of course, a big ask for someone. That to say, there's a lot that if you're not used to reading the comic books or reading a book, give it a shot. You might not, you realize what you're missing, but at the same time, you don't have to read everything to be a Star Wars fan, and I think that's important too.
Yeah, on that, I was going to say all three of us have very different perspectives. We don't all agree on what our favorites may be or what we enjoy. And I think that's always important to acknowledge that all three of us love this thing, but we love it in our own unique way. And we're always going to have that no matter how much we talk and share. We're always going to have different opinions, different thoughts, and different ideas about what it means to us and what's important. And I think that's really special to share and acknowledge that we all are going to have our own expectations of Star Wars, our own ideas about Star Wars, and our own way of viewing the entire series and all of these things that we love.
And I think that's a good segue for us to talk about some of our favorite Star Wars things. One of the first things to do to gauge someone's opinion about Star Wars is discussing what their favorite movie is. And for me personally, ever since I was little, Return of the Jedi has always been my favorite. And I think that's only grown more as the movies have come through. For me, in general, with stories, like the last movie or book in a series is usually going to be my favorite, as long as they stick the landing. 'Cause I just like when everything's wrapped up neatly. And for the majority of my life, Return of the Jedi was the end of the saga. And I think there's just something so special about, particularly being a prequel kid, and seeing all those threads being established in those first three movies being wrapped up so neatly, seeing all your characters redeemed and everything was so special. And then as a kid, I was obsessed with the Ewoks. I love the Ewoks. Jabba's palace was I loved everything there. That's the only like significant Lego set I ever like really wanted as a kid was the Jabba palace Lego set. And so that always has a dear place to me. But Return of the Jedi has always been the most special movie for me. Austin, what is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Okay. Favorite Star Wars movie is a tie. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to give two answers because it's our show. Obviously, Millennial Kid, Prequel Kid, Revenge of the Sith is my number one Star Wars movie. There's something about the way that ties all the prequels together. The music is absolutely breathtaking. I think that John Williams, he should have won an Oscar for Revenge of the Sith. That is the best music in the entire Star Wars series, in my opinion. Big Sith fan. I think the Sith are so interesting, and so I love the way that you can see the political manipulations of Palpatine throughout that movie. He's really so overt when you watch it, and it's funny to see to see people just fall into that. And it's easy to say that as an audience member, but some people are just stupid, and it's kind of funny to see how he can trick people so in such a chaotic obvious villain way. And then looking more towards the more modern movies, I'm a massive Rogue One fan. I love how it was the first movie that really stepped away from our saga movies, that kind of did its own thing, and it was still tied to, of course, but it felt really fresh and unique, and it was fun to see that story told for the 200th time, but for the first time in canon. That was fun.
And Mike, what about you?
I feel like I have to cheat as well, honestly. It's so hard to pick. People talk about I don't have kids, but people can't pick their favorite child. And to me, this kind of feels like that, where there's aspects of each movie that are my favorite part of Star Wars. So like Revenge of the Sith, story-wise, culmination of the stories I grew up getting to see them come out and being new to everyone. It means so much to me. The Last Jedi, the cinematography, the look of it, the feel of it is just so astounding. I love that movie. I think it is so cool, and I love that it breaks the mold, even though I know that didn't sit well with everyone. I think it was such a cool different way of looking at the saga and looking at the series. But what I think I'll say is the movie I've most watched, because I think that's a good indicator. And to me, it's The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace is by far, I think, the Star Wars movie I've watched the most. It's the background movie. I'll put it on. I can quote most of it, or at least I try to. And it was my first new Star Wars movie that, again, that same feeling of this is new for everyone. That's my first memory, is that pod racer from episode one. And so I think it has to be that movie. I love it so much. Jar Jar to me is still funny and interesting, and yeah, it gets some hate and he causes the downfall of the Republic later on, but it just means so much to me that I can't bypass it, even with people hating on it so much. I think it's such a fun addition to the series, and opening up the world for so much more. At that point, it was just three movies and a lot of books, and now we have so much more because of that.
I think it was so special for me getting to see Phantom Menace in theaters last year. I missed that experience as a kid, and it was so much fun being in a theater full of people that were prequel kid aged, and getting to like just seeing everybody cheer during the pod race, cheer when Darth Maul came out, everybody laughing at Jar Jar Binks. Like it was just like one of the best theater going experiences I've ever had.
Are we going to do an episode where I'll sit here with the script and I'm going to watch Mike quote the entire movie? I don't know if that'd be fun for the viewers, but it would be fun for us.
Well, it might be copyright infringement.
That'll just be for us.
That'll just be for us.
Moving on to favorite shows. I think I might have to cheat for that one and give two answers for that. I'm going to give myself a live action and an animated answer for
Yeah,
that one.
yeah.
Live action is the most easy for me, and that's Andor. And it's that by a wide margin. Andor, I think, is just like quite possibly the best Star Wars product ever made in terms of like quality and writing and directing. And I'm unbelievably excited for season two about to come out. As a kid, I've always liked Mon Mothma because I've always liked the political characters, and watching her be able to like blossom into this really like powerful character, it's been amazing. Rogue One has been my favorite of the new era movies, and getting to see a whole TV series done in that aesthetic has just been like fantastic. So Andor is definitely my favorite show. For animated, that's a lot harder of a call. I've enjoyed all of the animated shows to come out of the modern era. I think I'm going to lean towards Clone Wars. I mean, there's a very real chance that if you asked me tomorrow, I might say Rebels. It's a very tight call.
In terms of animation, I'm kind of right there with you that it's really tough to choose between those two. And right now I'm in the middle of a Rebels rewatch. So I'm gonna go with Rebels right now. And it's kind of for the same reason for my love of the prequels and other things is I got to watch it as it's coming out. I have memories of each week being able to see the episodes, follow the storyline and see these characters grow and change. I watched Clone Wars later, and so I don't have that same memory. In a way, in streaming culture has really changed this. I binged through it, and that changes your emotional connection to it. It changes how you feel about a series. I didn't get to ruminate on it, but Rebels I did. Of like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen next, and all the things that really build up with series endings and that really developed my love for Rebels as my top animated show. Bad Batch, I will say, is not a distant third. It's really close behind. And then Resistance is there. I've watched through it. I enjoy it. It's just very different. Same with Young Jedi Adventures. I've watched some of those episodes. The second season just got released a little bit ago, and I haven't watched it. But it's, again, as we talked earlier, not all Star Wars is meant to be for everyone. There's perfect Star Wars out there for somebody, and I'll probably watch through Young Jedi Adventures just casually or in the background at some point just to see what's going on because I do love the High Republic. But right now, that's not me.
I will interject and say I am a big fan of Star Wars Resistance. It's not my favorite animated show, but I do love it very much. CV-23 is my favorite droid. And I just need to make it known that Star Wars Resistance is great, and people need to watch it if they haven't.
All right, I'm going to go fresh, modern. No one's going to expect it. Live action, I'm going to say Skeleton Crew. I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. I was such a big fan of the Goonies as a kid, and those types of like 80s adventure movies were so fun. And I think that the Skeleton Crew absolutely captured that. And I really liked how they took a step away from the larger Star Wars universe. You didn't necessarily have to come in knowing really anything besides basic Star Wars stuff, which it kind of exists in the zeitgeist right now. It was just fun. I thought it tied it off really well. It's nice that we're not like setting up another season because we have to. And if they want to do more, that'd be great. If they don't, it can live by itself. Unlike one of our other lovely shows, The Acolyte, who unfortunately sits with a cliffhanger. Rest in peace, Acolyte. I would love to see more of Acolyte. To see them really work into something. As far as animation goes, I'm going to kind of sit there with Mike. Rebels is awesome. Unlike Clone Wars, I watched it before Rebels, but I binged it all. I think it was on Netflix at the time, and I binged it all right before Rebels came out. Sitting there after Twilight of the Apprentice and just having to wait. And we thought we would just have to wait until season 3. No, that wasn't good enough. We had to wait till season 4 to even find out what happened. And it was excruciating, and it was so fun to participate in the discourse online to try to figure out what's going to happen next, and Dave's little drips of information. It was a really fun time to be a Star Wars fan. Bad Batch is great. I'm really looking forward to what we do next. I hope it's something a little bit unexpected. I really like when Star Wars does something new. And so I really hope the animation kind of touches on something that we're not expecting it to, that we haven't done before. But we'll have to wait and see. And we will be covering whatever they do live on Rogue 3.
Moving on to a different form of media, let's talk about books and comics. Um, I know for me, my favorite book, my favorite novel, I'm going to give two answers for this. Since you guys cheated on movies, I'm going to cheat on books. In my opinion, the best book and probably my favorite is Dark Disciple. That was so special to me. I was a big fan of Asajj Ventress in Clone Wars, and getting to see her story wrap up was in such a perfect way, too. It really felt like I was reading a really good Clone Wars arc. And so that was really special. It was also because it was a novel format, they were able to be a little more mature with it than they were in an all ages TV show. And so I think that gave it a little more edge, and that was very befitting of that story in particular. So Dark Disciple is definitely my number one, but I would say the one that's most special to me is E.K. Johnson's Padme trilogy. Padme is my favorite character, and I remember the day that they announced they were doing a Padme book, and I was like at the Barnes and Noble when they walked in to get that book, and I think I've ever read a book that I read from cover to cover in like a day, and then I immediately started reading it again. I love that book, and I enjoyed the other two sequels as well. But that was such a special time for me from reading. Comics, I've enjoyed a lot of the comics that have been coming out. Um, it's hard for me to pick a favorite. I think my favorite's probably the ongoing, or the Vader series that just wrapped up. All the Vader series they've done since the Disney acquisition have been really great. But I thought there was something really neat about tying the Vader story so much to Padme, and all of the stuff that grew around her, tying into those Padme books, made it really special for me.
I have just started reading that Vader series within the past week and a half or so. So I just got to the part where Darth Vader gets to Exegol right after he's with the Amidalans. And I love that inclusion of them in the story, that they're just fighting to find out who killed Padme, and they are unfortunately unaware of the truth. It was really good, and I'm enjoying that series right now. For my favorite written media, my favorite book, it really kicked off with the Light of the Jedi with the High Republic, but Rising Storm is just from cover to cover intense, emotional, captivating. I thought it was just such a good inclusion in that series to really draw you in. Light of the Jedi, the first chapter that I read online when they released it before the book, captured me, and I waited for that book. But Rising Storm really brought it home that they were doing something really special with these books. And the High Republic, I have all of them right now. I'm ready for the end of the series in just a couple months. And it was amazing. I love the expansion of the Star Wars universe that it's brought, all of the High Republic, really, because it has included so many different things. It's included what I will say is one of my favorite characters, who is Geode. He's such a funny character. I would love to see a live action or an animated, but I know it won't work the same way of that character. If you haven't read those books, I highly recommend going and diving into the High Republic, especially as it's coming to its conclusion. You can try and binge read them. I As for comics, I was trying to think about it. I think it's a hard question because there's so many and they're so diverse, but ones that are quite different, I think, is there's a Darth Maul series, I believe, called Red, White, and Black. And rarely does Star Wars dip into other genres, but that dips into a little bit of a horror genre, which usually for movies is not my cup of tea. But it was so different. It was so strange that I really loved it. And yeah, there's the Darth Vader Red, White, and Black as well. That's gonna be,
Black,
I
white,
think,
and red.
Black, White, and Red. My bad. Uh, but that series I thought it was so different. And it was really, again, I really love when Star Wars expands its bounds and goes to different areas that isn't its norm, isn't the expected.
I absolutely agree. I love when Star Wars touches on things. I'm a big horror fan, so seeing things like that, especially in comic books, it's fun. It's so for favorite book, I would probably say that I'm thinking of the ones I've finished. Bloodline is probably my favorite. I really like that dive into the politics of the post original trilogy era. But I'm in the middle of reading the first Reign of the Empire Mask of Fear book, and I am absolutely loving it. I think that that one will probably end up being my favorite once I finish it off. As far as comics go, I haven't dug too much into the comic books. I really enjoyed reading the original 2015 run of Star Wars. I love the way it intersected with the Darth Vader run and the Dr. Aphra run. I thought that was really fun. I love the way they did events. It really felt like a superhero comic book type of thing where we have our own little world within the comic books. Something that's just so special about the books and comics is the way they can intersect together and talk about topics that maybe first appeared in a different one, but then the other one will pick up the storyline right from there and keep going.
So I think another key thing to determining what someone's like favorite parts of Star Wars is who their favorite character is, and that can go a lot of different ways. I think for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to stick to like main important characters and not all my favorite little minor side characters. I think that would be a fun episode for another time.
No
But as
Glup
far
Shido?
as
You don't like Glup Shido?
I have so many glove shadows, but I'm gonna stick to a series lead for this one. But my favorite character by a wide margin is Padme Amidala. She's been my favorite ever since I walked into that theater in 2002 to watch Attack of the Clones, and she's been my favorite ever since. And it's not always the easiest being a Padme fan because she doesn't get a lot of love. Every crumb that they make for her, you can share that.
I am right there with you. Well, you all already know this, but one of my favorite characters ever, Padme Amidala. Especially in Phantom Menace, I love the strength that she has. I feel like people write her off as like a weak character, and I think that that's such a bad rate of who Padme is. Um, she's strong. She fights for her people, and she does that all the way through the Clone Wars. It's really only in that final snapshot where we start to see some of the despair that kind of starts to sit in as everything she fought for comes crumbling right beneath her, which I think is really interesting to watch as a character as well. People always like to say she died because she was sad, and I think that that is just misrepresenting what's going on here. I'm going to also go ahead and plug from animation Ahsoka Tano, absolutely one of my favorites. Could not stand her when I first started watching the Clone Wars. Sorry, guys, couldn't stand her. I love her now. I think she's brilliant. I love what Dave has done with her in Rebels. I love the Ahsoka show, and I'm really, really excited to watch where her character goes next. What about you, Mike?
I'll have to differ with you both on this, unfortunately. But my favorite character is easily Obi-Wan Kenobi. Alec Guinness's performance as this wise mentor is so great in the original trilogy. He does such a good job with such little screen time, really, and you feel the weight of who this character is and who he's supposed to be for Luke, or who Luke wants him to be, really. And then with Ewan McGregor picking it up, Phantom Menace, and being able to carry that on, he does such a great job adding a little bits of himself in, but also mimicking some of the things that Alec Guinness does. The, as everyone knows, hello there is so great, and rarely do I think people think like, oh yeah, it's when he jumps in on Grievous, but Alec Guinness does it first in A New Hope, and so I love that they include those in the writing, but also Ewan McGregor does such a great job. I did love getting to see Obi-Wan Kenobi again in the Kenobi series. Wasn't my favorite series of all time, but I loved him, and I love him as just a part of Star Wars. That's one of the things that, for the actors that do it, it's really being involved in the Star Wars family, and he loves that. And I love getting to see that, even though not everything has worked out as perfectly as they imagine. He still cherishes it and loves it, and I love that part of it. So he's got to be by far my favorite.
I love it. Good stuff. We've dug into, some of our favorites, but let's dig a little further. What does Star Wars mean to you guys? For me, I think primarily where it sits is it's an escape. It's so easy to get drawn away from the troubles of our modern world by diving into Star Wars. It feels like it's something to put our energy into when maybe we don't feel like we can make as much of a difference in the world. And even further than that, I often credit Star Wars as partially aligning my moral compass growing up. I feel like there's a lot of lessons that I learned from Star Wars that I really still carry through today about how to treat other people, you know, what's right, what's not right, and the value of other people.
For me, Star Wars has had a very profound impact on my life. So I work in government, and my job I directly trace back to Star Wars. Really, my childhood as a kid. I remember, unlike most other 6-year-old kids watching the prequels for the first time, I was really latched on to all the political scenes. Learning what senators were and what bills were, and all of that stuff. And I distinctly remember uh, we were kids, brother wanting to play Jedi and wanting to play Cinnamons. Why I did not follow the path is purely into the political arena. In government, and I do work trying to help people, and that I've talked about it in job interviews before, and I tie that directly back to Star Wars. So Star Wars means a lot.
I love that it has molded kind of who we are as people. We grew up with this thing has become a part of who we are today. And I feel very much the same way that, yeah, Star Wars is an escape, but it also is a foundation for so much passion that I've had in my life. I read the new Jedi Order books before the Disney acquisition, and those were the books that I read page to page, cover to cover, and really developed a love of reading. My pandemic hobby was 3D printing, and I've gotten into printing props and different things. So a creative outlet. And so in so many ways, Star Wars has been so many different things for me. But the thing that I love the most about it is that it can be what you want it to be. If I want to go and read a political thriller, I'm going to go read Reign of the Empire, Mask of Fear again. If I want a high action, I'm going to watch Star Wars, The Clone Wars. It can be what you want it to be in any given moment. And I love that we have this saga, this experience of it being so much more than just a movie or just a show. I love to see it continue to expand, continue to go and do so many more things and become so much more for other people. The community around it has also been a big part of my life in a lot of different ways.
And so I think we've kind of covered a lot about who we are as people and why we love Star Wars. But I think now would be a good time to talk about what we want to do as a podcast, what we have coming up. I know one thing we've all been doing is reading Mask of Fear. I finished it last night, and I could not put it down. I love that book, and I'm so excited to talk about it with the two of you.
Yeah, so one of our next episodes is going to be doing a full-on review of Reign of the Empire Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed. And that's gonna be a fun. We've never really talked specifically together about a book that we all read at the same time. So this is gonna be a first occasion for us to really dive into a book. I know we all took extensive and different types of notes, so that's gonna be really fun to dive into next time we all meet.
After that, we're going to be kind of fast blazing into Andor season 2. So we'll absolutely be capturing those. We're not quite sure how the episode breakdown is going to work just yet, but we're absolutely going to cover that season, the 4-day releases. And then lastly, Celebration is coming up too. There's going to be lots of good news there. Certainly tune in. Hear our thoughts about what's happening next. I'm hoping we'll get some good announcements, maybe next animated series. Fingers crossed. And then from there, we're still working this out. I think we'd like to kind of break down our ranking of the movies overall, but we're certainly ready to get started and ready to see what's next.
I mean, if there's anything you want to hear us talk about, please let us know. You can find us on our different socials, and we love to hear feedback.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us for the very first episode of the Rogue 3 podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Thanks everyone for joining us to talk about the galaxy far, far away. You can find us on Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube, and TikTok as Rogue3 Media. We look forward to talking with you at the next rendezvous point.